Hello everyone and welcome to Use It or Lose It, a name that Schalk Burger and myself chose for our little show. Why? Because we've got no idea at all as to what we are doing, why we are doing it, and what it will become. So after 30 years of friendship, 15 years of professional rugby, a hell of a lot of injuries, and now being has-beens, we decided to sit in lockdown, me and Paul Schalk Burger on the west coast of the Cape, and just chat in this time of lockdown. Scalla, how are things there in the west coast?
Johnny, it's terrible to be honest. It's no wind to speak of. It's mid-20s. The ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, normally quite angry at this time of the year, entering winter, but it's like a dam. If I could go in there, I can swim there. It would be freezing, but I would be there on my stand-up paddleboard. It's been lovely. Lockdown's been weird for all of us, and I reckon this is why we're getting some content. I think all of us are a bit bored. We want to talk about stuff. We're used to being quite busy, traveling up, doing a few shows on television. So this is the next best thing. So trying to bring some content, a bit of fun, talk nonsense, and pass time. I think it's important during COVID-19.
Yeah, and we can't see it now, but I mean, you've got a tough life as well, eh? Sitting there in lockdown in Eiserfontein. We can't see it now, but the sea is right in the background. You've got access directly to the sea. You can see it, you can smell it, you can hear it, but you can't go there. Your kids, the boys must be so bloody frustrated not being able to just have a dip in the water, even though it is cold, have their feet in the sand and just playing around.
Yeah, it's been weird, John. I mean, obviously we're 50 yards from the beach, but we can't access it. So it's probably more difficult to explain to your two kids than it is for us. But in saying that, you just make peace with it. We're in this situation. There's nothing much we can do about it. I mean, it's the one time in your life where you've got an astroturf down the back, but you use it more than the beach up front, which is so hard to do. But listen here, we have sat on the dune up front here and just watched the sundowners because the weather has been magnificent. But definitely weird times, and I guess this is why we're coming up with a show. Trying to create some content, trying to stay busy, trying to stay relevant, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a new world, right? It's so different to what we are all used to, and life will be different after lockdown. I suppose I look back on our careers, and life is different now as well. People might remember you as the blonde number 6 flanker with the blonde locks. Now you look very different, Scalla.
A couple of things have happened since. We're obviously married. We get married, which is not easy. But I guess what we take out of it, it's much harder playing as a loose forward for South Africa as playing as a centre. I mean, surely it must come down to that. A few years ago, beautiful blonde locks. Now there's nothing. And I mean, it's quite depressing that actually we obviously can't cut your hair at the moment. Even though there's no barbers open because I don't need a hairdresser anymore. But the fact that my hair is not growing at all and my beard subsequently has tripled in length pretty much shows that I've got no future in growing any hair.
Yeah, look, I think the one thing that people will be very surprised by, and that not a lot of people actually know, is the fact that that you are actually 2 years younger than me, because you look so much older, right? And and this again just proves it. I mean, I've been growing this beard. I don't even know if you can see it on the camera, but I've also got something here, but it's more like a teenage boy trying to grow something on his face than an actual beard or moustache. And yours is this beautiful, full-grown beard. I think you should just, have you considered maybe just cutting it off and plucking it on your head or something like that?
If I turn this camera upside down, I might look like I did 5 years ago, like hair on top, nothing down the bottom. But I mean, John, you've got glorified bum fluff. I don't know how you can have bum fluff at the age of nearly 40. You're nearly 40, still not bum fluff. But yes, I mean, it's kind of depressing to think that I'm 2 years younger than you. I've got no hair left. Must come down to playing loose forward for South Africa. Much harder work than playing out the backs, taking a few intercepts. I mean, come on. And that and the fact when we were younger, we were playing cricket. You were a wicket keeper, man. You were a wicket keeper / batsman. I was opening bowler. We had to put in some hard yards. You were just standing there saying, I mean, the most depressing thing about playing cricket with you is when every once in every 10, 15, 20 balls, you stray one down the leg side. You didn't even go for it. You just put out your left foot and said, if it hit your foot, fine. If you didn't, just follow it outside off.
I'm still of the opinion that my knee problem started right there with my technique as wicketkeeper. But actually, on the cricket point, Scalla, our families have known each other for a long time, but you and I became friends more on the cricket field initially than on the rugby field, with the age gap and all of that. And two things actually. So I'm going to talk about the one first, but you can answer that second. Is the fact that you got a cricket contract out of school and not a rugby contract. Okay, so I don't think a lot of people would know that, which is absolutely bizarre for someone that saw you playing rugby in your professional career. Someone that played cricket with you like me, I wasn't that surprised. You're a bloody good cricketer. But second to that, I've had a look at our stats playing rugby together. Okay, you had, combined, we've got more than 200 international games together. Okay, for playing test matches and for South Africa and for the Barbarians. 230 odd Stormers games together. But if you have to single out one sporting moment as a highlight of the two of us together, what would that be?
It's easy. Our opening stand against Springboks, Belgium. So easy. I mean, we went through, John was a wicketkeeper come batsman, and then we went through this phase, sort of late 90s, where the pinch hitter was a thing. I remember Sri Lanka doing it with Jaya Surya and Kala Witharana. And then I was your more traditional opening batsman, all being reasonably aggressive. And then we got the pinch hitter in John de Villiers. And we lost the toss, and we were sent in by Vredenburg to bowl. We had a decent bowling attack, playing away from home. And it was the greenest wicket you've ever seen. It's one of those where I reckon normally the game would be done by lunch. 170 odd runs later, our opening partnership still going. John smashing it to all parts of Vredenburg, and I'm just taking little singles here and there. I mean, by far our best moment ever. I mean, I've never had so much fun on a sporting field.
Yeah, I must say it's such a memorable moment, and it's amazing how the beauty about cricket is the fact that you stand out there, and that's why I like to be the wicket keeper. Probably a little bit tall for a wicket keeper, but you're always in the action. You've got 1, 2, 3 oaks in the slips with you. You stand there, you talk a bit of crap all day, you chirp a little bit, and when you get an odd chance to bat, you try and hit it as far as you can. So on that day, it all came together. Take us through the life after school, getting a cricket contract. How did you get back into rugby?
It's a kind of funny story. So I had similar to you, John. I had 2 big knee injuries standard 9 in matric playing rugby. I always liked rugby. I always liked cricket. But then after my second knee injury, I sort of just lost a bit of interest in rugby. You just sort of go like, geez, this is hard to take, And then cricket season was upon me, and then played cricket and really enjoyed it, and started playing for Wellington first side. And then Stellenbosch University phoned me up and said, what are you doing next year? So I said, well, listen, I'm going to Stellenbosch. So then midway through the club season, I swapped to play for Stellenbosch. And then a little Bulland Cricket Academy contract followed suit. So then I was playing cricket based in Stellenbosch. Obviously, as you know, John, our first years of studying didn't go according to plan. And then
that's wrong. You can't say studying. It's our first year at Stellenbosch. We didn't do any studying. We were just there.
My cricket was going well. There wasn't such a thing as studying. And then all of a sudden, first year's tournament, rugby first year's tournament comes around, and I get asked to play a bit of rugby for Indra. And obviously not a very well-renowned rugby res in Stellenbosch. And
I agree.
Played the first year's tournament, and we won the plate final against Elsenburg. Absolutely smashed them. And the next moment, I was getting asked to come to play for certain teams here and thereabouts. So obviously said, no, I'm playing cricket. And then, funnily enough, the Stellenbosch Marties was going to Bloemfontein, called the Bloemfontein by train, and we play intervarsity, the old intervarsity games. And then the under-19s and under-21 Marty sides were actually overlapping, and they wanted someone to sit on the bench who can cover almost every position except prop and hooker in the pack of forwards. And I was that guy, so they asked me to go. And on the way there, Kuba Smith, who was in our rival school, boys, shame. I mean, obviously not a great school he went to, But he fell ill overnight, and all of a sudden I was starting at number 8, and the flankers next to me was Justin Malcolm and Bossy Clark, both who went on to play for Western Province. And that was it. I mean, such a crazy start to it. So this was like, say, around about March, April. And, by the end of that year, I won a SA Under 21, a world championship with the SA Under 21s and you and Clyde Rathbone as captain. Faruda Priya as number 9, and a whole host of other good players. And the next day I was walking into a nice contract at Western Province and became a Springbok a year later. Where was this the most ridiculous transition?
Yeah, it was crazy, that you made that transition to cricket back to rugby, and within a couple of months, you like win an international tournament with a rugby team. But that under 21 tournament for me, is probably one of my best memories as a rugby player. And just the times we had there, but more importantly, the players. You've mentioned a few. And if you go through that team, so we won the under 21 World Cup, but you had Guthrie Steenkamp, Gary Botha, Johan Smith, yourself, Pierre Vandenberg, Jacques Cronje, Ricky January, Faruda Priya, myself, Clyde Rathbone, Ashwin Willemse, Yori Miller, everybody, all of them went on to play for South Africa, or Clyde, for Australia. So it showed it was a pretty special team that coached by Jake White, and the memories was just amazing, and it's
you're in a good spot at the under 21s when you're sitting next to Faruda Priya on the bench. Just had such a good summer. We played against I think the importance of our victory then, although we played in South Africa, which makes it a bit easier, especially at a junior level, is the teams we beat to get there. So obviously beating the All Blacks, which was their glory, their superstardom team, the team that became the best team in the world for 10, 15 years. The bulk of that side was in the under 21s, our side, our era, and then the same with the Aussie side that was very competitive for a long time. So I think actually, the fear factor around the All Blacks, because we had a lot of success against them for various years. But I think it comes back to that under 21 victory we played at Rao. Tight game, but they had, the Rokokokos and the Carters and whoever was there. So it was a big win for us just on a mental level.
And winning that game for the under 21s, but then 2 years later, when both of us we played in Christchurch in the Tri-Nations in 2004, and how disappointing that game was, losing right at the end. But sort of the attitude that we went into with, we've got nothing to lose. We didn't fear the All Blacks at all. And it was this young team, of which a lot of them played in that 2002 under 21 tournament. Just going in, seeing it as just another game and understanding the rivalry, but with an attitude of, we can beat anyone anywhere.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking. Dougie Howlett. I mean, you can't forget. We can certainly not forget after the hooter. But I mean, we jumped out to such a good lead early on, and it's exactly that. You had Christchurch. No one's giving you a chance. It was freezing. It was the evening game at the old stadium, which is no longer, unfortunately, due to the earthquake. But I think that was the attitude we had back then. Is that we got nothing to lose, and unfortunately for us, we were probably just not good enough to get the result, but what followed after that is, I think, real belief too. We went to Joburg after that, where Mari Chabert scored the hat trick, and you came up with you scored 3 and I've scored, the 1, and we beat them 40 points to 26. I mean, it's also the only game I saw a bloke cramp 20 minutes or whatever it was. What are you playing wing? After 20 minutes, I saw you stretching. I was like, what? He's pulled a calf, he's done a hammy. He says, no, I'm cramping. I'm cramping after 20 minutes. I'm like, can't be. Surely not.
I felt, okay? It takes a lot out of you. You mentioned Doug Howlett. I was fortunate to do my one season at Munster and playing with Dougie and became pretty good friends. But I don't know if you recall back in 2014 when we played Ireland, end of your tour, and Dougie joining us post the game. Can you remember that evening in Dublin?
Remember so well. We were staying in that hotel sort of out of town. It was almost like a little castle or like a little, estate. And then Dougie came across the hotel, and we sat around the bar. And then later on, we moved from the bar into another little area. I think the bar closed later on, and there was a guy on a guitar or someone on a piano. And then we sat there, probably left there with about half an hour to get on the bus. And the bus was probably leaving about 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
what a nice guy. What a nice guy. I mean, you obviously, the nice thing about sport and playing in different countries, like I played in Japan and played in England, it's like, I mean, obviously difference in culture. Everyone's different. You get English, you get a Kiwi, you get a South African. But at heart, we're all just rugby players and want to have a good time. And you've got so many stories to share. And often we go about the All Blacks, say, listen here, how great was that player? Or how great was this player or this English player or that Japanese player? And they, as Kiwis, do exactly the same in their pastime. They sit there thinking, how great was this? You know, how great was Joost van der Westhuizen? And how great was, you know, Dani Gerber? How great was, you know, Tian Strauss? How great was? They sit and reminisce about South Africans. How good was Oosterand? You know, how accurate was Percy Montgomery's goal kicking? Same thing. So it's so nice to sit and spend time with these guys, and obviously drinking a few lagers, drinking a few bottles of wine. I mean, it's just great. That's what the sport's about. And I guess, you know, going forward, where the sport becomes too professional again, like the current generation of player, maybe I sometimes fear that they miss out on the opportunities we had. Because when we started playing rugby, there was a big function afterwards. And even though you drink 1 or 2 beers with the opposition, at least there's a bond formed. You know, where nowadays, especially with Super Rugby, where everyone's got traveling schedules and there's not a lot of time where you finish the game and after the game you head off to somewhere else. I'm scared that sometimes, you know, that relationship might become superficial because they're all going to like its, you know, Instagram posts or online, whatever they do. But it's not like us who shared a beer, swapped a jersey. I think, you know, we run the risk that rugby might lose a bit of its values, which we luckily had an opportunity to have.
But Scalla, the reality is that rugby, you know, not only the progression of rugby, but also because of this lockdown, rugby will never be the same. And I think it's quite difficult to think where, you know, what rugby will look like once we get out of the lockdown, and you know, who will survive it and who will not, because the financial pressures with everything that's going on in the rugby fraternity is massive.
I think this has actually come at the worst possible time for rugby, because ever since turning professional, never could we really compete with other professional sports, you know, on a commercial level. So the issue for us is, you know, post last year's Rugby World Cup, which by all means was a massive success to the diehard rugby fan and, you know, opening up to a new brand or new followers. And in Europe, rugby commercially was on an all-time high. Obviously, this comes at a bad time now because rugby has now lost all that momentum. So we've got this lockdown, and the issue with this is the financial implication, not only on certain teams or competitions like we see with the ARU or Sanzar down here and SA Rugby, your players potentially sitting on a 40% pay cut. In Europe, you know, if the season doesn't open up, there's talk of 4 or 5 top premiership teams that's been, you know, the stronghold of the premiership, you're basically closing doors. So rugby, as we know it, if rugby doesn't start getting played this year, I think it's going to look completely different. And it's sad, and unfortunately, it's very hard on the rugby player, you know, because unlike, you know, certain people who's, you know, maybe, you know, a dignitary or a doctor, you know, their careers are going to carry on forever, or they can change their job. For the rugby player, especially an older rugby player, a younger rugby player, maybe not so much, you know, take a big pay cut now, but you've got another 5 years to make some income. But if you're a player, say, for example, at Saracens, like a Michael Rhodes or Brad Barrett, that's in their last season, this is unfortunately your last season, or Francelo at Bath, you know, you get a pay cut, and unfortunately, this is retirement. There's no time to make it up. So I think, you know, the ramifications of this lockdown is massive, and I don't think we would quite understand the extent thereof until that's all done.
But the big positive that I see is that it's a fantastic opportunity to realign rugby globally. You know, to provide something and build something that you can start from scratch, because you know, the whole game has come to a standstill. And we've got the time now to be able to plan and put something in place, you know, improve the product that we have and make it something that's attractive to the viewers, to viewerships, and to live spectators again. So it's an interesting time. We haven't emphasized it enough today that it will be different, and that our new normal will certainly not be what we used to.
I think obviously every year, especially over the last few years with Super Rugby growing and sort of taking over your whole season, that and Test match rugby, we sort of, lost track of what we really want to see, because every weekend there's games and it carries on seemingly from Friday morning till Sunday afternoon. Where I watched the episode of the Isolation Nation guys in New Zealand, and they were calling for long tours back into South Africa. Well, if there's a global season, which means there's dedicated slots for tours a month, we can have these proper long tours, and they won't come across every year. They'll be every third year. But imagine as a spectator, for us, we can actually go with South Africa, travel New Zealand, because you can't travel with, a Test match championship, because the traveling is just too frantic, or even a Super Rugby tour is just too frantic. So, yes, I think massive changes. I like the more South idea. And that came about, rugby league, they don't really have an international season. So that was like their form of international. I know like when my parents and them, when your dad was playing, they played in the Isolation in the 80s, and they had massive trials, and like sort of, it was almost like sort of north-south. And I remember when we were under 21 under Jake White, we had our two national sides, so the two South African rugby sides, the A and the B side, the gold and green side, or whatever they were called. But then the other teams that was competing against us, the other two teams, was a Highveld side and a coastal side, which was inherently a north versus south thing. So I reckon, the norm for rugby is going to change. But what it will do is force us to look at rugby differently. I reckon the amount of professional rugby players is going to be trimmed down massively. The season's going to be trimmed down. We're just going to become a bit more economic viable. We're not going to have 400 professional rugby players within South Africa. That number is going to be a lot smaller. Same in Europe. But yeah, let's hope we survive that. And I think, like all of us, what we are craving is watching live sport. And whatever goes with that. Going to the pub, meeting up with your mates. Watching a bone-crunching tackle, the sound of rugby, the smell of rugby, grass, deep heat. All of that, we're getting withdrawal symptoms. I'm definitely getting it. So let's hope.
My knees are starting to hurt once you start talking about all those tackles and stuff. I was when there was a big game or a big tournament, I usually got injured. And even today, before the filming of this, I got up with a stiff neck. So, I just can't get rid of these injuries. But rugby will be different. So we would like to make the show a little bit more interactive going forward. But for this one, we asked some people to send through questions that they think could be relevant to Schalk and myself, questions that we get a lot. Well, some of these we don't get a lot. First question, Scalla. Did we ever go for the same girls? Did we like the same girls?
No, we've got different tastes, I think, in girls, but also we're way too good at mates. We basically spend more time together than we spent with our wives. I think we're catching up now. The wives are catching up now. But no, I never went for the same girls you had.
Yeah, exactly. We actually struggled a little bit, the two of us, when it came to the girls, right?
Yeah, I've got a question too for you, John. And they say, who did better with the girls and why?
I think I did fantastically well, even though I was a bit of a nerd with the girls. But if you look at my wife now, I'm the luckiest man in the world. Plus, I've got 3 kids, so she's watching, so I have to say this.
Yeah, I would confirm that John did much better than me with the girls, predominantly because he likes girls more than beer, and I like beer more than girls.
Well, your wife might disagree. Scalla, what was the best pickup line that you ever used?
I've only ever used one pickup line. I've got to give a bit of it. It might be a bit long-winded answer, but like my first year, after a cricket match, me and my flatmate at the time, we went, his name is Lion, believe it or not, me and Lion went to Tollies as we do, Castle Court in the one hand, Castle Court in the other hand. I saw this bird dancing. I was just standing there thinking, this is me. I told Lion, this is it. This is the girl I want to marry one day. And before the end of the song, she came walking off the platform down past me. So obviously caught me a bit off guard. And the only line I had was, hello, baby cakes. Hello, baby cakes. And it's one of those, you get out there and you think, shit, that's gone badly. That is not going to work. It would have worked. It wouldn't work with anyone else. But that pickup line got me my wife. We've been together ever since. So, hello, baby cake.
Biggest achievement together?
Yeah, there's a few. We obviously, our opening partnership is top of the pops, 179, I think it was. I think by the time we're 50, it's going to be 200. But in seriousness, we won 2 Tri-Nations together. SA Under 21 World Cup for World Cup Under 21s, and a World Cup. Although John wasn't playing in the final, he was in that squad. Ironically, last year, it was the first World Cup he hasn't been injured. I was very nervous on the final when he hasn't pulled something that he might slip in studio and fall over. But he survived last year's World Cup.
Best moment of the other guy. Scalla, I would say your best moment. Obviously, there would be plenty, but being nominated as World Player of the Year in 2004, I think a very special achievement. And that's the biggest accolade that any rugby player can get, to be the best player in the world at that stage. It doesn't get much better than that. And you're probably going to say one of my injuries would be my best achievement. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's obviously the injury is the one, but it's coming back from the injury. So, like John, obviously, if you don't know it, 2 big knee operations at school, and then straight after school, and then 2002, his debut for the Boks had another big knee injury. And it's not coming back from them. It's like, how do you go and play 100 test matches after basically having no shoulder left, no knees left? I mean, that's the biggest achievement. We always joke that, my job was harder because I was a loose forward, but for him to come back from those injuries is immense and play 108 test matches and 350 plus professional games. That's what stands out.
Things that people won't know about us.
John is a drummer. John likes to be a drummer, but I play a bit of guitar every now and then.
Yeah, Scalla is very, very humble and modest. He's a very good guitar player, and his whole family really. Schalk also a good guitar player. His brother Tian plays the drums. I got a set of drums from my wife and my kids for my birthday this year, so that's on my to-do list. And who knows, one of these days we might start a band, use it or lose it, going live. Scalla, I think the one thing we can agree on is that we've been able to meet some fantastic people, on our journeys as rugby players, not just great rugby players, but great sportsmen as well, great musicians, and those we can now call our friends. So I suppose that's the idea. What we're trying to do here is to have a catch-up, you and I, for the start, but to get some of those people on the show, not just to focus on the rugby, but to get some of the cricketers on, get some of those musos on, and other people that we call our friends. And who knows what we can do with this show. The sky's the limit. We're in lockdown. Everybody's got time. So tune in next time. The show is called Use It or Lose It, and do exactly that with it. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Tell your mother, tell your father, tell your friends, tell everybody you know. And let's see you next time. From Schalk Burger and myself, John de Villiers. Till next time. Cheerio.
Ciao, guys.